They tried to bury your name, but forgot that seeds grow in silence. My dear chosen ones, let that line sink in, because that's exactly what happened, isn't it? They couldn't handle your peace, so they went after your presence. They couldn't shake your success, so they tried to stain your story. It never starts with courage, it starts with whispers. Tiny, poisonous words that crawl through conversations looking for a host. But here's the twist they didn't expect. You were the antidote all along. See, they thought your calm was a cover-up. They thought your distance meant guilt. They didn't understand that when a storm is brewing, it's always the mountains that stay quiet. My dear chosen ones, you are that mountain, still, unshakable, watching the noise blow itself out. They sent an investigator, remember, someone to dig into your life like they were unearthing buried treasure. And in a way, they were, because every person they spoke to unearthed proof of your integrity, your consistency, your quiet strength. Imagine their faces when the report came back glowing, when every question turned into a compliment, when their little plan to humiliate you turned into your highlight reel. That's what happens when lies collide with receipts of truth. The moment they aimed the spotlight at you, it only revealed how clean your reflection really is. They went searching for dirt and ended up polishing your name instead. And now they're mad. Mad that your character didn't crumble under pressure. Mad that every person they asked became an unplanned witness to your authenticity. They expected chaos and found composure. They expected whispers and heard applause. That's the kind of revenge only truth can deliver. Silent, elegant, undeniable. My dear chosen ones, let's be real. This isn't the first time they've tried, is it? You've seen this pattern before. When people can't touch your growth, they attack your grounding. They'll question your calm, your motives, your silence. Why don't they react? They'll say. Because reacting gives them relevance. You already know that. You've learned that stillness isn't weakness, it's power under control. You were never hiding, you were observing. You were studying the same people who thought they were studying you. And when they finally sent someone to find the truth didn't need defending, it stood up by itself. Every coworker who said, they're always professional. Every friend who added, they've helped more people than they'll ever admit. Those words became your armor, and the ones who tried to wound you ended up wounding their own credibility. Chosen ones, that's what they hate most. The fact that your reputation is self-sustaining. You don't chase validation. You don't beg for defense. You just are. And when your life has that kind of stability, even an investigation becomes free publicity. You turned their curiosity into your campaign. Their gossip became your promotion. Their envy became your evidence. Let's talk about that feeling, though. The one that hits when you realize people were plotting while you were just living. The sting of betrayal, the disbelief. You might be asking yourself, why me? The answer's simple. Because you make mediocrity uncomfortable. Your very existence exposes how small their ambitions are. You remind them of everything they could have been if they'd chosen discipline over drama. They don't actually hate you, chosen one. They hate the reflection of themselves when you walk into the room. And that's why they had to try. They needed proof that you weren't as clean, as calm, as composed as you seem. They needed to find a flaw to make themselves feel better. But they didn't find one. So now they're not just jealous, they're humiliated. Because the same mouths that whispered against you have to live with the fact that they built your reputation stronger than ever. That's poetic justice in motion. They tried to frame you, but the frame couldn't fit the truth. They thought they were documenting your downfall. Instead, they captured your rise. You've become their uncomfortable mirror. The reminder that calm still wins in a world addicted to chaos. So to every chosen one watching this, stand tall. Don't waste your breath trying to explain what time will prove. Let them whisper, let them dig, because every shovel they use just helps plant your legacy deeper. You're not under investigation, you're under recognition. The light isn't exposing you, it's showcasing you. Remember this quote: "They threw shade, but you turned it into shelter." That's your story. You didn't break, you didn't clap back, you didn't lower your energy to match their insecurity. You stayed still, and stillness revealed strength they can't understand. So next time they send someone to check your name, let them. Let them ask the streets, the co-workers, the friends. Every answer will sound the same: real, solid, consistent. Because when your life aligns with your truth, even gossip turns into good press. You were never their target. You were their lesson. And the lesson hit harder than they ever imagined. And before we go any further, listen closely, my dear chosen one, because this part is for you. Whether you just found this message or you've been walking this path with us for a while, understand this: your support isn't just a click, it's energy. Proof that truth still wins in a world addicted to noise. So if you've ever felt eyes watching, whispers chasing, or people pretending curiosity just to feed gossip, this is your moment. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments if you're ready to turn every rumor into recognition. Stay right here, because what's coming next will sound exactly like what's been happening around you. Only the truly chosen will feel it. Let's get started. Number 1, they searched for dirt, but uncovered your discipline instead. They went digging for dirt and unearthed their own defeat. They tried to dig your grave, but all they did was build your platform. My dear chosen ones, you already know this story. It's the oldest trick in the jealous playbook. When they can't climb to your level, they grab a shovel. They think if they dig deep enough, they'll find a flaw they can frame, a weakness they can weaponize. But here's the irony: they didn't dig into you, they dug into themselves. They uncovered their envy, their bitterness, their obsession with seeing you fall. Every scoop of dirt they threw only revealed how clean your ground really was. They called it an investigation, but let's tell the truth. It was never about finding facts. It was about feeding fantasy. They were hoping the myth they built around your name would finally match their imagination. They said, "No one can be that composed, that calm, that consistent." Oh, but you are, chosen one. You've been steady long before they started watching. You've been disciplined long before they started doubting. You're not performing integrity, you're living it, quietly, daily, naturally. Picture them now, hovering over their phones, waiting for bad news, waiting for someone to say, "Yeah, I saw them slip once." But every call, every message, every whisper they sent came back with the same answer: solid, grounded, respected. The investigator didn't find a scandal, they found structure. They didn't find skeletons, they found standards. That's what burns them. Because while they were trying to expose you, the light they turned on showed their own shadows. And I know what you're thinking, chosen one. Why do they care so much? Why does my peace make them so angry? It's simple. Your existence reminds them of everything they lack. You live proof that quiet confidence wins over loud chaos. You walk into rooms without a word, and somehow you shift the entire energy. They can't replicate that. They can mimic your look, your work, your tone, but not your essence. That's why they stalk. That's why they gossip. You've become the proof that authenticity still works, and they can't stand it. They wanted to find flaws, but you gave them discipline. They wanted drama, but you gave them data. The investigator came back not with rumors, but receipts, proof that you've been consistent even when no one was watching. Think about that for a second. The same silence they thought was suspicious turned out to be your credibility. The same restraint they mocked became your reputation. Every moment you stayed calm while they provoked. Every time you walked away from chaos instead of feeding it. You were building an invisible defense system, and when the test came, that system activated perfectly. Let's be real. The reason they failed is because they didn't understand the difference between image and identity. They've been busy polishing their masks while you've been building your foundation. They thought your confidence was fake because theirs is fragile. They thought your kindness was calculated because theirs comes with conditions. They can't process what it means to be genuine because their world runs on performance. And when they came for you, they learned the hard way. Reality can't be rewritten. My dear chosen ones, take pride in this. They didn't just fail to ruin you, they accidentally made you legendary. Every person they tried to turn against you ended up defending you. Every rumor they spread became a mirror showing who they really were. They planted lies like seeds, expecting weeds, and instead you bloomed. That's the beauty of living clean. Every attempt to bury you becomes a gardening session for your reputation. You may not have heard it yet, but your name is being spoken with respect in places you've never been. The same co-workers they whispered to, they're now saying, honestly, they've always been the same. Calm, kind, focused. The same friends they probed. They're defending your name with quiet confidence. That's what scares your enemies most. The realization that even people who barely know you have nothing bad to say. You've built a life that defends itself. And I'll tell you what hits them hardest. It's not your success. It's your steadiness. You don't react. You don't explain. You don't panic when they start poking. You've mastered the rare art of self-control in a world that glorifies outrage. They were waiting for you to snap, but your silence became their sentence. Every word they spoke about you now echoes back as proof of their insecurity. Chosen one, hear this clearly. People can't destroy what they can't define. You confuse them because you don't play their game. You don't overshare, you don't overprove, and you don't overreact. You let time be your witness, and time always tells the truth. The longer they talk, the more their stories collapse under the weight of reality. They're frustrated because the more they dig, the deeper their own embarrassment gets. And maybe you're asking, why not just clear my name? You don't have to. The truth is doing that for you, quietly, efficiently, relentlessly. You were never under investigation. You were under confirmation. You were never being exposed. You were being elevated. They thought they were documenting your flaws, but they ended up archiving your excellence. That's the kind of poetic justice no revenge can match. So, my dear chosen ones, let them keep talking. Let them keep digging. Because every time they do, they're just making your roots stronger. The harder they push, the higher you rise. Their obsession is your advertisement. Their curiosity is your credibility. And their disappointment, that's your trophy. Remember this quote. You don't need to fight for your truth when your truth is undefeated. You don't have to swing back when the scoreboard already shows you winning. They came looking for dirt and found gold. They tried to stain your name and ended up polishing it. That's the irony of envy. It always exposes itself faster than the truth ever could. And so, chosen one, walk with your head high. You didn't just survive their investigation, you redefined it. You turned their search for weakness into a showcase of strength. You didn't have to defend your name. Your name defended you. They tried to bury your story, but all they did was plant your legacy. Number 2, the streets didn't echo lies. They echoed your legacy. The streets testified, and silence became your applause. They tried to drown you in whispers, but the streets started singing your name instead. My dear chosen ones, this is where it gets poetic. They thought they could turn the crowd against you. They thought if they whispered loud enough, the world would listen. But they forgot something. Truth has a longer memory than lies. When the dust settled, the same streets they polluted with gossip became the ones that echoed your respect. You didn't have to post proof, shout back, or beg for validation. Your record spoke for itself. The same people they counted on to drag your name ended up defending it. Picture it, the investigator walking those same halls, asking quiet questions. "What's your experience with them?" he says. They expected chaos, they expected doubt, but every answer was the same: solid, kind, reliable. The walls that once carried whispers now carried confirmation. The report didn't just come back clean, it came back glowing. Because when your consistency becomes your reputation, no rumor can outrun your truth. And you, chosen one, you didn't even lift a finger. That's what's driving them insane. You didn't call meetings, you didn't plead your case. You just stayed calm while the world corrected the record for you. Every person who's ever seen you stay professional under pressure, stay kind when others snapped, or stay focused when chaos tried to pull you off track. Those people became your silent witnesses. You didn't build your reputation overnight. You built it in quiet moments when no one was watching. That's why it couldn't be erased when everyone started looking. They thought their lies would grow wings, but they forgot that truth walks. It doesn't rush, it doesn't panic. It just shows up at the right time and stays. Lies sprint, truth endures. That's why the noise burned out while your name stayed standing. They thought their numbers would win. But when the truth entered the room, it only needed one voice to silence them all. And you might ask, why does it still sting even though I won? Because betrayal hurts even when it backfires. But here's the flip side. Every person who doubted you now carries quiet guilt. Watch how they move differently now. Watch how their tone softens when your name comes up. They'll avoid eye contact, change subjects, pretend they never believed the lies. But you'll know, you'll feel the shift. The embarrassment hits harder than any confrontation ever could. That's poetic justice. The same people who once rolled their eyes at your name now nod with respect when it's mentioned. The same streets they once used to smear you now echo, actually, they've always been real. That's not luck, chosen one. That's legacy. You built that defense long before the attack began. That's why you didn't crumble, because your truth was already fortified. Let's be honest, envy doesn't care about evidence. It feeds on imagination. They needed a story that made them feel better about their own failure. But when the facts showed up, their fiction collapsed. You became the living contradiction to everything they said. Calm instead of chaotic, kind instead of calculating, grounded instead of guilty. And now, the silence that follows your name is not suspicion, it's surrender. You didn't just survive their narrative. You rewrote it without saying a word. That's power. Real power doesn't shout, it proves. You don't need to defend your character when your consistency already has a fan base. The streets testified for you, chosen one, and their verdict was unanimous. So walk proud. Let them stay quiet. Let them stew in the echoes of their own failure. You don't have to explain anything to people who watch the truth unfold in real time. The same crowd that once doubted you now quotes you. The same mouths that mocked you now mimic your composure. And that's how it ends. Not with an argument, not with a fight, but with reality itself taking your side. The investigation didn't clear you. It confirmed you. You were never the suspect. You were always the standard. Number 3, even your critics became proof you were built different. Even their silence spoke in your favor. They wanted your enemies to speak against you, but even your critics told the truth. My dear chosen ones, this part hits different, doesn't it? Because nothing confuses a hater more than silence that still speaks well of you. They thought they had a plan. If friends won't flip, maybe the quiet ones will, they whispered. They counted on indifference turning into ammunition. They were sure someone, anyone, would finally say something ugly enough to validate their lies. But when that investigator came knocking, what they found wasn't dirt. It was discipline. Even people who didn't like you had nothing bad to say. Imagine that. Your enemies built an entire fantasy and the truth refused to play along. That's when the panic started. Because when even the quiet ones, the co-workers who never talked much, the neighbors who just nodded hello, the acquaintances who kept their distance, say they were always respectful, always professional, the game ends before it even begins. That's not luck, chosen one. That's legacy. You lived too real for rumors to rewrite you. Your character left fingerprints in rooms you never even entered. And maybe you've wondered, why does it sting them so much? It's because honesty exposes obsession. They weren't looking for truth. They were searching for permission to hate you. But what they found was evidence of consistency so clean it burned their excuses to ash. They thought the quiet ones would whisper something dark, but even silence leaned your way. Because when you live authentically, your energy tells the story before your words ever do. You see, chosen one, not everyone has to like you, but even those who don't can't lie about you. That's power, real power. The kind that doesn't come from being liked, but from being known. You didn't beg for respect. You earned it through behavior that never needed an audience. Every time you stayed calm instead of petty, every time you chose grace over gossip, every time you walked away instead of clapping back, you were writing your defense in invisible ink, and when the test came, that ink glowed under pressure. Think about that investigator calling an old co-worker, someone who barely interacted with you. They were expecting bitterness, maybe indifference, but instead they always did their job, never caused drama. That one line hits harder than any speech, because truth doesn't need volume, it only needs verification. You can't twist the words of people who've only seen your grace. And that's what destroyed them. Their whole plan relied on assumptions, not evidence. Even the ones who misunderstood you had to admit you never crossed the line. That's the beauty of authenticity. It doesn't ask for fans, it builds witnesses. Some might not vibe with your calm, but deep down they respect it because they've seen what chaos looks like. And you're the opposite of that. Your control, your composure, your proof that silence can be louder than gossip. And let's be honest, this is where it gets poetic. They thought absence meant guilt, but it meant peace. They thought quiet meant weak, but it meant focus. You weren't hiding, you were healing. You weren't running, you were refining. They were waiting for you to explode, but your stillness suffocated their strategy. Every rumor they rehearsed fell flat against the wall of your reality. They built a case, and your character dismantled it without saying a word. So now they sit in silence, replaying conversations, realizing they've run out of ammunition. Because what do you do when even the people who don't like someone still have to admit they're solid? That's the moment envy turns to defeat. That's the moment truth wins without ever raising its voice. Chosen ones, remember this. Silence doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it's just the sound of your truth standing undefeated. You didn't need to defend yourself. Your consistency did that for you. Every witness they thought would confirm their lies ended up confirming your steadiness. That's why they're mad. Because you're not spotless. You're transparent. And transparency terrifies people who live behind masks. They tried to drag you through mud, but all they did was wash your name clean. They wanted whispers, they got witnesses, they wanted proof of your flaws, they got proof of your focus. That's not coincidence. That's karma disguised as confirmation. And now, the same quiet voices they counted on have become the echo of your integrity. So stand proud, chosen one. Because when even your critics speak well of you, the war is already won. Number 4. The report didn't expose you, it exposed their reflection. The report didn't break them, the reflection did. They brought a flashlight to expose you, but all they did was light up their own shadows. My dear chosen ones, this part hits deep, because there comes a moment when the truth doesn't just defend you, it humiliates those who tried to destroy you. They wanted to see cracks in your armor, but all they found was their own reflection staring back, shaking. They wanted to expose your flaws, but the light they aimed at you bounced right off and exposed their insecurity instead. They didn't expect that. They thought this so-called investigation would crush your composure, but the only thing that cracked was their illusion of control. They were waiting for your name to crumble under scrutiny, rehearsing their fake sympathy, preparing their "I always knew it" faces. They pictured you embarrassed, cornered, exposed. But when the truth came out, it didn't whisper, it roared. Every confirmation of your integrity, every piece of evidence that proved you were solid, hit them harder than any confrontation could. Because what they saw wasn't just your character, it was their lack of it. The truth is, chosen ones, they didn't want answers. They wanted ammunition. They thought, if I can prove they're not who they seem, maybe I can stop feeling small next to them. But they failed to realize that peace is not a performance. You weren't striving for perfection. You were living with purpose. While they were dissecting your life, you were building one worth studying. And when the investigator came back with nothing but good words about you, that wasn't a report. That was a mirror. Imagine the silence in that moment. The investigator says, "Everyone I spoke to had nothing but respect for them." The air turns heavy. Their smiles freeze. You can almost hear the sound of their excuses crumbling. Because deep down, they knew it would end this way. They just didn't want to admit it. They weren't waiting for proof. You were the proof. Here's the real sting. The truth didn't just clear your name, it made theirs irrelevant. You see, it's one thing to lose an argument, but it's another to lose to someone who never argued at all. That's what you did. You let the truth do the talking. You let the facts breathe. And while they were busy narrating fiction, reality walked in and turned their story upside down. They're not haunted by your success. They're haunted by their reflection in your calm. Because every time you win quietly, every time you move forward without flinching, it forces them to face their own chaos. You became their mirror, chosen one. And mirrors don't lie. They show everything as it is, especially the parts people try to hide. They thought exposing you would bring them peace. Instead, it exposed their envy. They wanted the world to see your faults, but the only thing revealed was how desperate they were to find any. That's why they're angry even after the truth came out. It's not that they lost the battle, it's that they lost the mask. They can't pretend anymore. Everyone sees who's who now. And the most brutal part? You didn't even have to fight back. You didn't post, argue, or explain. You stayed focused, composed, quiet. That silence was your victory speech, because integrity doesn't shout, it stands. You didn't ruin their peace, they ruined it by trying to measure their worth against yours. They can't rest because your reflection keeps reminding them of what they could have been if they had chosen growth instead of gossip. Chosen ones, understand this. When you live in truth, every attack becomes self-inflicted for your enemies. The light they aimed to burn you with just exposed the stains they tried to hide. You can't bury someone who's rooted in authenticity. Digging only reveals more of their strength. They wanted to investigate you, but in the end, they uncovered themselves. That's poetic justice at its finest. So don't carry their anger, chosen one. Let them keep wrestling with their reflection. Their fury isn't your problem, it's their confession. Every time they hear your name, it'll echo like a mirror breaking, reminding them of who they pretended to be. You didn't just survive their investigation, you exposed their illusion. The truth didn't break you, it broke their comfort. It stripped away their fantasy and left them face to face with reality. And that, my dear chosen ones, is the ultimate revenge. Walking away clean while they drown in their own reflection. Number 5. They tried to narrate your downfall, but truth hijacked the script. They tried to write your story, but the truth stole the pen. They wrote your obituary too early, chosen one, and now they have to watch you read it aloud, alive and louder than ever. My dear chosen ones, have you noticed how some people don't fight you with facts? They fight you with fiction. They don't throw punches, they throw paragraphs. They rewrite your piece into a plot twist, your confidence into a conspiracy. They wanted to be the narrators of your downfall, turning every room into a rumor, every silence into suspicion. They thought if they controlled the story, they could control how the world saw you. But here's the plot twist. They didn't realize the truth always gets the final edit. They mistook your stillness for submission, your privacy for guilt, your composure for calculation. They whispered in corners like bad authors who forgot how to spell reality. They spread half-truths through messages, screenshots, and side-eyes, thinking if they repeated the lie long enough, it would become believable. But truth doesn't need repetition, it just waits. It lets the noise wear itself out. And when the real story finally surfaces, it silences every made-up chapter. Imagine their faces when the investigator started asking questions. Not opinions, not gossip, but facts. One by one, your co-workers, friends, and even casual acquaintances gave the same answer. They're genuine, always professional, never in drama, just solid. Every voice that spoke became another nail in the coffin of their narrative. What they called investigation turned into confirmation. The story they scripted in secret got torn apart by evidence they didn't control. That's the beauty of consistency, chosen one. You don't have to convince anyone when your life does the talking. They underestimated how strong your track record was. They forgot that people may doubt words, but they don't doubt patterns. And your pattern was too clean, too disciplined, too real to twist. You've been writing your truth every day through action, not explanation, and no rumor can edit that. They thought they were the authors of your image, but your reputation was self-published by reality. They wrote you as the villain, but the audience saw the truth. Because once people start connecting dots, once they notice how your actions never matched the lies, the illusion collapses. Their story stopped making sense. And when fiction stops making sense, the storyteller loses the mic. Now the same people who once believed the gossip are asking the questions your enemies can't answer. Why were they so obsessed with someone who never even mentioned them? Why does this hate feel so personal when the target stayed professional? Those questions are lethal. They turn sympathy into suspicion, and suddenly the manipulators become the main suspects in their own story. And that's where you won, chosen one. Not by arguing, not by clapping back. You won by outlasting the noise. Time became your co-author. It rewrote every lie with patience. Your piece outlived their performance. They tried to stage your downfall, but the spotlight they aimed at you exposed them instead. They built their gossip like a house of mirrors, twisted reflections, distorted angles, all meant to make you look crooked. But mirrors only work in the dark. The second you let truth walk in, every reflection broke. Now they're scrambling to rewrite history, but the damage is done. Their version of you has expired. The audience has left the theater. The mask slipped, and the real story is out. The irony. The same voices they once used to spread lies are now echoing your praise. The same people who whispered doubts now repeat your name with respect. That's not luck. That's poetic justice in motion. They wanted to write your ending, chosen one, but all they did was set the stage for your resurgence. You didn't fight their story. You replaced it with results. You didn't beg for clarity. You became the example. The truth doesn't rush, it waits for the applause, and it's here now. So let them sit in silence, staring at the ashes of the story they wrote. You didn't just survive their narrative. You stole the pen, rewrote the plot, and signed your name in ink they can't erase. Their fiction failed because your facts never flinched. And that's the real ending they didn't see coming. They thought they were writing your fall, but they accidentally published your rise. Number 6. You lived so consistently that even strangers became your witnesses. You lived so real, even strangers became your alibi. They thought they could expose you, but the truth had already hired its own witnesses. My dear chosen ones, imagine living so authentically that even people who barely know your name stand up when your character is questioned. That's power, that's presence. That's what happens when you walk in truth so consistently that your reputation starts defending itself. While they were busy performing for attention, you were practicing integrity without an audience. While they were curating appearances, you were building evidence. And when the investigator came knocking, the answers didn't come from your friends alone. They came from strangers who'd seen you, felt your energy, and knew exactly what you stood for. See, chosen one, the difference between you and them is simple. They perform, you prove. You didn't have to say, I'm a good person. You lived it in 1,000 small ways, by staying calm under pressure, by treating people with quiet respect, by walking away from drama that others fed on. You didn't need a spotlight. Your consistency became your light. That's why the investigator's notes read like a character reference instead of a case file. Imagine it, person after person, whether it's a co-worker, a neighbor, or someone who's only met you once, all saying the same thing. They're solid, calm, kind, real. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern built by discipline. You left fingerprints of honesty everywhere you went. Even when no one was watching, your behavior matched your words. That's what makes your story different. Your truth doesn't need an audience to exist. And now, those who wanted to see you fall are furious because their whole plan depended on mixed opinions, confusion, and contradictions. They thought at least one person would validate their lie. But instead, they found unity. Every voice they expected to twist your image ended up echoing the same narrative, genuine, grounded, respected. That harmony destroyed their fantasy. Because envy can't rewrite facts that have already been witnessed. You know what's really eating at them, chosen one? The realization that your reputation wasn't built through charm, it was built through character. They can fake smiles, fake loyalty, fake friendship, but they can't fake the energy that comes from authenticity. You're too consistent to corrupt. You don't chase approval, and that's what makes you powerful. You've mastered the kind of peace that can't be staged. The peace that comes from knowing who you are, not who they say you are. Let's be real. They wanted you to be messy. They needed you to slip, but instead, you stood taller. They wanted your name to fracture under pressure, but pressure only revealed your structure. The truth about you didn't need rehearsing. It was muscle memory. Years of quiet discipline became your defense. That's why, when the report came back clean, it didn't surprise the people who really know you. It only shocked the ones who never understood you. And here's what they can't handle. Even the ones who don't like you still respect you. They might not vibe with your calm, but they won't lie about it. That's when your enemies realized they lost the war before it began. Because you can't assassinate a character that's been verified by reality. You can't discredit someone whose reputation is cross-checked by strangers. Chosen ones, understand this. Your consistency is your shield. When you live aligned with your truth, your life builds witnesses without you even trying. People remember the way you made them feel, the steadiness you carried, the way you stayed silent when others would have shouted. That's the kind of proof no rumor can erase. You're not surviving gossip. You're outgrowing it. So when the investigator closed the file, your enemies didn't just lose a scheme. They lost control of the story. You didn't defend yourself. Life did it for you. You didn't fight for validation. It arrived, unsolicited, from people who owe you nothing but respect. That's what living real does. It makes you undeniable. And now, chosen one, let this sink in. The reason they're mad isn't because you won. It's because you didn't even have to fight. They threw suspicion at you, and your reputation caught every punch effortlessly. They came to prove you fake and left proven wrong. That's the type of victory that doesn't just silence enemies, it teaches them that truth doesn't tremble under questioning. So keep living that way, quietly powerful, consistently real, because you've reached a level where even strangers defend your name, and that, chosen one, is the kind of credibility no investigation can touch. Number 7. They mocked your silence until that same silence made them irrelevant. They laughed at your solitude, now they're drowning in its silence. They mocked your quiet, not realizing silence is the sound of strategy. My dear chosen ones, remember when they used to snicker because you kept to yourself? They thought your solitude was a sign of weakness. They mistook your peace for pride and your distance for arrogance. They didn't know that while they were performing friendship for attention, you were perfecting your focus in silence. They couldn't understand that you weren't avoiding people. You were avoiding problems disguised as people. They called you antisocial, detached, mysterious. But what they couldn't see was that your quiet was your construction zone. Every moment you spent alone, you were building something they couldn't comprehend. A reputation that didn't need repair, a foundation that didn't need approval. They gathered in groups to gossip. You gathered your thoughts to grow. And now, when the spotlights turned harsh, when their names are tangled in whispers and blame, your silence has become your shield. Let's be honest, your solitude was never loneliness. It was self-preservation. You understood early that not every crowd is company, and not every conversation deserves your contribution. While they were bonding over rumors, you were building resilience. While they exchanged secrets, you were exchanging weakness for wisdom. And when that so-called investigator started asking questions, your distance became your defense. Because your name wasn't in their messages, your face wasn't in their screenshots, your energy wasn't in their mess. That's the power of walking alone. You leave no footprints for fools to follow. Imagine their shock, chosen one, when every circle they trusted started cracking. One question, who said this? And suddenly, the same people who laughed with them started backing away. Loyalty built on lies doesn't last long. But your solitude, it stood like stone. They thought you were excluded. In truth, you were protected. They thought you were being left out. But you were being lifted out of the noise, the drama, the emotional quicksand that swallows people who crave attention more than peace. You see, solitude isn't silence, it's selection. It's choosing not to entertain what drains you. And that's what terrifies them now. They see you standing tall, calm, unbothered, while their alliances collapse under the weight of their own deceit. They used to say, "You think you're better than us." But now they whisper, maybe they were right. Because when chaos finally came for them, it couldn't find you. You were never in their rooms, never in their screenshots, never in their storylines. Your absence became your alibi. Let's call it what it is: discipline. You didn't hide because you were afraid. You stepped back because you were wise. You knew that silence doesn't just protect peace, it prepares power. While they were busy showing off, you were showing growth. You saw what they couldn't. That fake company costs more than honest solitude. You understood that being alone for a while is better than being surrounded by those who'll sell you out in seconds. And now, when the dust has settled, look who's still standing. You, solid, centered, respected. They once laughed at your quiet, now they envy it, because they realize noise attracts attention, but silence commands respect. Their group chats have turned into ghost towns, and their alliances are nothing but ashes of convenience. But your solitude, it's become your fortress. Every moment you spent away from them was another brick laid in your protection. My dear chosen ones, remember this: peace doesn't need witnesses, it just needs boundaries. They thought your silence meant surrender, but it meant strategy. They thought your distance meant defeat, but it meant direction. And now, every echo of the laughter they threw at you comes back to haunt them, because the same silence they mocked has become the silence that shields you. So hold your head high, chosen one. Don't ever feel guilty for walking alone when walking alone saved you. They played for attention, you played for legacy. They traded loyalty for likes, you traded noise for knowledge. And now the scoreboard is clear. Your solitude didn't isolate you, it insulated you. You're not the quiet one anymore, you're the untouchable one. They laughed once, but now every breath they take around you feels heavier because silence has chosen its side, and it's standing right next to you. Number 8. Their rumor became your marketing. Every lie turned into your spotlight, when good gossip became your shield. They whispered lies behind your back, but truth answered every question before you even spoke. My dear chosen ones, this part right here is where the story flips. You didn't have to lift a finger to fight them. Your reputation fought for you. While they sat in dark corners, plotting rumors and building fake narratives, your name was already doing laps around the room with nothing but respect attached to it. They were hoping to hear chaos, but every mention of you came back calm, steady, and real. That's the kind of defense no strategy can beat. You didn't even realize it, chosen one. Every quiet decision you made, every time you chose maturity over mess, was building invisible armor around you. You thought you were just doing what's right, but in truth, you were writing your own protection plan. Every person you treated with respect, every situation you handled with grace, it all stacked up into something powerful. That's the thing about integrity. It's silent while you're building it, but deafening when it's tested. When that so-called investigation began, they assumed people would jump at the chance to talk bad about you. They were wrong. What they found instead were witnesses, real ones. A co-worker said, "They've always been respectful." A neighbor mentioned, "Always mind their business, never in drama." A friend added, "They stay calm, even under pressure." Imagine their faces, chosen one, when they realized every lie they rehearsed had already been overruled by the truth. That's the beauty of clean living. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. And that's what makes them furious. Because gossip can only survive when the truth is missing, and in your case, the truth never left the room. Even people who barely knew you had the same thing to say: solid, composed, real. That consistency became your shield. They were trying to fire shots at your image, but all they did was expose their own weakness. You didn't block them with arguments, you blocked them with evidence. The best part: you didn't even know your defenders existed. People you once helped quietly, people who watched how you handled challenges. They spoke for you without being asked. That's not luck, chosen one. That's legacy. You built a name so reliable that it became self-sustaining. Your truth traveled faster than their rumors ever could. You see, the real power of a chosen one isn't noise. It's proof. The world remembers how you made them feel, not how your enemies tried to frame you. And when the time came to test your name, the verdict was already written in every small act of integrity you ever lived. You didn't just win, you neutralized the war before it even began. They mistook your calm for vulnerability, but calmness is the language of control. You didn't need to clap back or throw shade. Your consistency did the talking. That's what burns them now. They fired shots at your image, and the bullets bounced right off, ricocheting back into their own credibility. Chosen one, understand this. Every time you refuse to argue, every time you let silence speak, you were reinforcing your armor. Authenticity is bulletproof when the world is addicted to performance. You weren't unprotected, you were underestimated, and that's their biggest mistake. So when you hear that people are talking about you, smile. Because you know the kind of talk that travels in your direction isn't slander, it's testimony. You've become the story they can't twist, because too many people have already lived proof of who you are. You didn't need to defend your name defends itself. They wanted to destroy your reputation, but they ended up branding it stronger. They wanted to silence your progress, but they accidentally gave it a microphone. That's poetic justice. Because when you live in truth long enough, even gossip starts working for you. And now, chosen one, let this sink in. While they were busy crafting lies, you were crafting legacy. While they rehearsed rumors, your reality rehearsed resilience. They can't undo that. They can't compete with a record that's spotless by action, not by claim. So let them keep talking. Every word they speak about you adds polish to your name. Every attempt to mock your peace becomes a billboard for your power. They wanted to drag you into the mud, but you made the mud irrelevant. You didn't survive their attacks. You exposed their weakness. That's the secret weapon of a chosen one. You don't fight with noise, you fight with proof. And by the time they realize it, it's already too late. Your story has moved on without them. Your reputation walks ahead of you, chosen one, and their lies can only trip trying to keep up. And that, my dear chosen ones, is how every whisper backfired and turned into applause. You didn't just survive their investigation, you rewrote the outcome. The truth stood taller than every rumor, and your name became the headline they never saw coming. This is your era of quiet victory, your moment to walk with confidence, knowing your integrity did what noise never could. So before you go, show that you stand with the truth. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments if you're ready to keep walking with calm power while the world finally catches up. Share this with another chosen one who needs to hear it.